So, this episode, I'm going to be talking about one of the more notably strange locations in the game. And it's conveniently right after the video that I just made involving Everdread's haiku. And this area is Moonside. It is a inversion of Foreside that when you go into this cafe, you're told by Everdread to look behind the counter. You do so, and then you are strangely brought to this weird place. So I'm going to show you some clips, basically just little snippets to get an idea of the more useful things, I guess. And then I'm going to talk about those aspects that I think are very worthwhile to mention in this place. So, the first thing that you notice when you are transported to Moonside is obviously the obvious visual thing where all of the environment, besides the characters pretty much, are this very bright neon light, kind of flashing neon light color, almost from that like movie, I think, that old movie that mixed cartoons with live action actors and all that. Cool World, I think it was. I think it had this kind of aesthetic almost. I can't really interpret much from that, but it's just kind of weird. Oh yeah, also if you want to be in the bar or the cafe or whatever, or at least in Moonside, a lot of the floors seem to have the kind of weird checkerboard pattern or whatever you want to call it. If you want to get with all that Masonic symbolism thing or something like that, I don't know. That's not my thing, but yeah, if you want to mention that. And one of the first things that you are encountered with in Moonside is the many different strange enemies that you are forced to encounter to a degree. Like, there's only 4 common enemies here. There is a enraged fire pump, some gas pump, something like that. The living gas pumps. Then this one, abstract art. Then there's another Dolly's clock, which is just a melting clock. I guess I'll talk about the enemies a little bit. just because they're definitely one of the, I guess you could say, things that you could kind of interpret from this potentially, like maybe not the enraged fire pump and the gas pump. At least I can't with those, but like with this one, the abstract art, just interesting. That's obviously what they're going for, is like weird stuff in this Moonside place. In this art that you can see in the sprite, I have no idea what it is, but it's like some kind of humanoid figure that has a crescent moon head, and then it almost looks like kind of a snowman sort of figure on the other side, or next to it. And then, interestingly, there's a crescent moon in the background. Besides with the moon symbology, I can't really interpret much from this, but it's definitely a pretty weird thing. And the fact that they even bothered, I guess, to make like something sort of that you could make out almost in this sprite. But yeah, that's what I would see from that. And then you have this one, which I find the most interesting of all the enemies you can encounter here, besides maybe the Manny Manny statue at the end. But the Dali's clock, and it's obviously a reference, or whatever you want to say, to, or an homage to that Salvador Dali painting, the melting clocks, or whatever it's called. That painting has so much that you can interpret from it in so many ways that, it just fails to be something that you couldn't kind of talk about, like, yeah, that's really strange, or that's really interesting that it's in here, in any kind of form. And the cool thing about this enemy in particular, that it stops time in the game, or whatever, which basically just means your health doesn't count down while it's stopped, and the music stops as well, which is cool. But very simple enemy otherwise. But I found this interesting, especially just because Christoph made some video about a Salvador Dali painting that was, I guess, a synchronicity for him. A very weird one with, what was it, the pomegranate, the tiger, the person that looked like they were getting, from a rifle, the jab or whatever, and a bee, and then he even mentioned the melting clocks painting, I believe, and just Salvador Dali in general. And I was like, oh wow, that's interesting. And in this game they have an enemy that is a homage to that painting. And I remember he said something that he made from interpretation about that, even though there's probably an infinite amount of things you could say about that painting, just involving time, or what we perceive as time, or just, I don't know. There's so much stuff that can be said. I can't really say I have one interpretation that I have from that painting, but it's very, I could say, important. I don't like using that word, but I would say important to somebody doing sort of metaphysical interpretations, I guess, to realize that exists, I guess. I'm having a hard time putting words to it or whatever, but it's very important, even though I don't like that word, of a piece of art that has been pushed throughout society and everything. So, as you talk to most of the NPCs in Moonside, besides the guys that look like beach guys or surfer dudes, whatever, all they do is teleport you around. You'll notice very quickly that the people in Moonside seem to be talking some kind of nonsense for the most part, but if it kind of follows the pattern where it's welcome to Moonside, just welcome to Moonside, and then like kind of jumbled up the text. But I'm not sure what to interpret from that, I guess, but it's very, very weird that so many of them that say this. There's like at least there's really not that many NPCs in this area when you really go through it. But for the ones that you do talk to, at least like 3 or 4 of them say that the jumbled up welcome to Moonside and stuff. And almost every time it says demon at some point, even though it's like D-moon. You could just like read it right there. It's just, you see demon, and I don't know what to see from that, but it's very strange. Just something I felt was worth mentioning. Like it's not like they jumble up the text so it's unreadable, but when you see it, you see it. It's like, all right, here's this line: demon, D-moon, demon. Very weird. And obviously on the theme of inversion that this entire area has, is that for this entire area, whenever you say no, it actually means yes, and whenever you say yes, it actually means no. Like in that sense, everything's inverted. And I guess you could also interpret anything that the NPCs really say to a degree, in that regard, is just the complete opposite of what they're saying, I guess. Not that they really say many things that have 2 options. It's usually just kind of like weird stuff. That's one of the main things I wanted to mention was, like, first, the entire theme of Moonside being an inversion of everything. When you come in here, the first thing you realize is that yes means no, no means yes, so everything's inverted. And just the name itself, Moonside, is, one would look at that as like the inversion of the sun, I guess. Maybe, like, I think most people could kind of imagine that, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily like true. Like, I wouldn't say that. I don't know. I don't really know much about the kind of symbolism and stuff, but I wouldn't say that the moon is the opposite of the sun. I would almost say that, like, the moon is some kind of, maybe the moon is some kind of reflection of the sun, or a reflection of something. Like, even in the BS science explanation, it would say that the moon is reflecting the light of the sun, and that's why it is illuminated at night, which I don't believe that at all anymore. But even in that, they say it's reflecting something. So I would almost look at the kind of moon as just a sort of symbol of almost a mirror of this reality. And it makes sense in that interpretation for Moonside here, because as a mirror, it is just reflecting everything. And what is Moonside? It is at least in its logic here, everything is a reflection of the world that you were just in, being Foreside. Oh, that's a weird thing to think about too, is Foreside. I guess a square. At least if you're thinking about a 2D, a square has 4 sides, and I know squares have meaning to them. But yeah, like Moonside being a reflection of the other reality, and the moon being kind of a symbol of a reflection, like a mirror of something. I don't think it's a reflection of the sun, but it's some kind of luminous body that is similar to the sun, but it's not the same. So maybe it is an inversion of the sun in a way. I mean, when you think about day and night, it's kind of an inversion. I mean, it's not like the moon is a complete inversion where it actually gives off darkness or something like that. Like the opposite of the sun, which gives off light, the moon giving off darkness or something. So, to me, it's obviously not a complete reflection in that regard, but it definitely has some symbolic meaning to it in that way. And I guess if you want to, I still don't know what this, and as Matt says, I don't think anybody will know exactly what this is meant to mean. It can mean so many different things to so many different people in every facet of their, like, imagination. But the saying that people use a lot for that, this realm, I guess, is the as above, so below. I don't know. I just wrote that down because I thought something about it with Moonside, but I can't really think about what I wanted to say about that. But just the inversion of everything, one could say that with, or not so much the inversion per se, but just the reflection of oneself, I guess, with the as above, so below. Like, in Foreside, there's a lot of problems, but even in the inversion of Foreside, that being Moonside, there's still problems. Even though the people aren't regarding it at all, you're the only one dealing with these problems here, the enemies and the weirdness going on. I just, there's something that drew that out of me when I was thinking about this Moonside area, was that saying as above, so below. So that's something I wanted to mention too that I noticed while I was getting the footage for this. Was the hotel in Moonside is called Dark Moon Hotel. I don't know. Like, somebody could just say, hey, it's just a name, but I feel like the Dark Moon thing comes up more than I would expect. Like, what in the hell is a dark moon? Because the moon that we know of, at least, it's always illuminated in some way. Like, if it was a dark moon, you wouldn't see it. I don't know. So, the dark moon, like the evil moon, like if somebody wants, not necessarily saying dark means evil, but a lot of people would interpret it like that in some ways. And this gets brought up in other things as well. Dark moon, I think there's a Luigi's Mansion game that's in the title. It's called like Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon or something. I don't know. It just makes me curious what the dark is there for. Like, why not just call it Moonside Hotel or something? But Dark Moon Hotel, I don't know. Just, I don't see the moon as ever being dark. It's always light. It's always been lit up when I look at it because I can see it. So, just weird. And this is the only way that you can complete this Moonside area and escape it, I guess, is you have to find this invisible guy after you get teleported somewhere, and then he starts following you. The only way that this guy says he'll let you through to get out of Moonside pretty much is to have a guy with you with connected, a unibrow or whatever, have connected eyebrows, and has a gold tooth. I have no idea what that might mean. It probably doesn't, maybe it might not mean anything, but if somebody wants to think about that one, that's something. So, as you're progressing through the area, this lady sort of gives you some foreshadowing. I see you in a country in summer, which later on you get to a place called Summers, and a big silver ball, and I'm not sure what that part of it means. The only thing I could think of is later on in the game you use these big silver spheres to teleport in the very like end section of the game, and a big silver ball, but it's not in Summers, so it's a little bit strange. You're burnt, but you're fine. I don't know what that part means, besides when you eventually learn to teleport, if you mess up teleporting, you get like your character sprites get all burnt, like they just exploded or something, like in a cartoon. So that's the only thing I can imagine that meaning, I guess. And then when you finally get past the sailor guy or whatever, you find this guy that is supposedly, or I guess he supposedly looks like Monotoli, and he is what he looks like later on when you do finally meet him in person. But then you actually fight a Manny Manny statue, or at least a Manny Manny statue in this form, or whatever you want to say, and it's called Evil Manny Manny. I didn't think about this until later, but the only attacks that, at least if I remember, the only attacks that, yeah, that's actually something I should note down, but the only attacks that this Manny Manny statue uses are like its basic attack, physical attack or whatever, and the more interesting one, Flash, which is just basically like just a big flash of light, which Ness knows how to use, but it's interesting when you realize when you defeat it that, I mean, one, you could say that it's in some way a reflection of Ness, but I guess probably the more base level thing you can interpret is that when you defeat it, you realize that this statue, all it was doing was creating illusions. So the fact that it's creating illusions and it's using most of its attack it ever uses is a flash of light, like, that's kind of interesting, I guess. But really, the most important thing that you realize, I guess you could say escaping from Moonside, is that when you defeat the Manny Manny in Moonside, you find out that the reason you were in Moonside, at least by this game's explanation, is that the Manny Manny statue that Everdread found, I guess, for one, it was somehow giving Monotoli, that you find out later, his evil powers or whatever. Like, after it's destroyed, he doesn't have those powers anymore, but man, this statue was creating the illusion of Moonside, almost like creating a separate reality kind of deal, or creating a reality sort of deal, like an illusion, that being what we almost see a reality as an illusion kind of thing. So, very interesting thing there. And like I said, I'm going to make a video that is more specifically about the Manny Manny statue itself. You know, it gets brought up so many times throughout the game that it's kind of impossible not to talk about it outside of that. So you kind of find out that, to a degree, the Manny Manny statues are just a device that creates illusions. It created a false kind of reality in a way for Ness and Jeff there. But then you kind of have to come to the realization or conclusion, to a degree, that everybody else that was being influenced by these Manny Manny statues, like Mr. Carpenter, Everdread himself, even, that's why sort of he stole the statue, I guess, Monotoli, even, at least as far as you could tell, Pokey, to a degree, is being influenced by these illusion devices. Like, one could almost interpret the Manny Manny statues. Actually, I would think that'd be pretty close, or a pretty fairly accurate conclusion would be like, they are kind of like the screen that we talk about, that we know is, you know, we see it every day. You put on a TV or something, you go on the internet or anything, you go outside almost, you talk to some people, they mention the screen. Is that Gygas's influence, or whatever, I don't even want to give Gygas, like, he is some kind of all-powerful entity here, even though that is what he is in the game. But his real influence that he's had in the quote-unquote physical world so far has only been through putting these many statues, which you can interpret as being illusion devices, which we can also interpret as in the same regard in our own reality as like the screen itself. And that is what is causing the quote-unquote evil influence and behaviors of the people being affected by the illusion devices, the screen. And I apologize for how kind of all over the place this episode, I'm realizing, is kind of going to be, most likely, just the way I was bringing up the topics. It's a very weird place, Moonside, but it has a lot of stuff to be interpreted from it, I think. And that one kind of the moon thing, I think, is the most important, or not the most important, but one of the more important ones. The idea with the moon and whatever you can interpret from that, and the entire place being an inversion of everything else, basically, can say something about the moon if you want to look at it that way. And in terms of the game, and I think in general, probably the most important thing that you realize is actually when you leave Moonside, being the Manny statue, at least that one that you found, and you could probably interpret that the rest of them that are in the game are in the same vein, an illusion device, basically like the screen that we know of. And that the influence of the greater system in itself and the minions, whatever you want to go by, is mostly not real. Like, it is as I said, an illusion, and the only thing that is keeping those influences being effective is kind of choosing, in a way, to be influenced by the illusion device or the screen. But yeah, hopefully that video wasn't too messy, but I think there has a lot of things that you could probably get from it, I guess. The next one will hopefully be a little bit less messy, but once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.